In this lesson titled Formatting Charts and Chart Elements, we're in Workbook 07, Creating Charts, and we're on Worksheet tab, Formatting Chart Elements. Let's start first by creating a chart. Now, you might already be familiar with doing this from previous lessons, but we have a couple of options, and one that's very quick is just to select the data, and I'm just going to select anywhere in there, and I'm going to hit Alt F1 on my keyboard. And it gives us the chart. Now, we've learned previously that we decided we did not want grand total included in our chart. So one thing we can do is simply come over here to our selection and change it so it no longer includes totals. I just grabbed that corner control point and moved it over. But I want to show you something else. You might run into this situation. We also have these three buttons that show up next to each chart when it's selected. And this bottom one here is filters. You may notice that filter icon right here that's used all through Excel. I'm going to check on that. And we can turn off items. You can see down here one of the categories is called grand total. And you can see it actually lights up when I highlight it. Grand total. So if I unselect that and say apply, you may think, okay, I've gotten rid of the grand total. I could bring it back, it's still there, but I've gotten rid of it for now. But actually you'll notice in this blue here, that's actually part of the grand total by series. You can see up here series, and there's grand total series still there because it's a series and it's a category. See, grand total and total. So if I did it this way, I would actually have to get rid of, and I want to highlight it right there, I'd have to get rid of my grand totals by series as well. And then say apply. And then I have the chart like we wanted it. So just remember, if you do decide to use the filter to get rid of your totals, you may have a total that's a series and a category, and you have to get rid of both of them. Well, let's take a look more at manipulating our chart. We decide we want to change our chart title. I just select that once. I hit equals on my keyboard, and up in the formula bar I get it equals. I click on the title. What does it equal? It equals the title, and I hit enter. You might need to practice that a few times to get it right. So let's make some other changes. We decide, for instance, that we want to change some of the elements. So what are our elements? Well, you can actually click and then click on different elements to actually see what they are. So this orange here, if I roll over this orange, I'm going to roll away and roll back to see what it is. It's Medical Series by Region Southwest. What can I do with that? Well, I can't really adjust it. I can't really grab the end of it and pull it down or anything. But I could delete it. I could say I just don't want Southwest there anymore. I could hit delete on my keyboard and it's gone. If I come over here to my filters, it's no longer one of my choices. I can't even add it back. So maybe that's not the way I want to get rid of it. I'm going to hit Control Z on my keyboard. Some other elements I could change, maybe this title that we just created with an equals in the formula bar. Maybe I want that to be a different color or size. Well, if you go to your Home tab, you have all of your font group commands available to you. So I could make it a dark blue, I could make it bigger, and the chart elements adjust to kind of get out of its way. You could bold it or underline it. Any of these kind of font things are possible. You could even change the font type. No reason we have to use the one that they gave us. Let's get something a little different here. So there's very different. Definitely not the recommended font for that probably. But what about some other things that might be a little harder to get a hold of? Like, do you see these grid lines here? These are called major grid lines. If I try to click on them, sometimes I get right on them, and do you see how I've selected all of them? They have control points on each end. Other times I'll click and instead I'll get the plot area. So sometimes it can be kind of hard to get those. There we go, I got it again. Well, one way you can select it is if you go to your Format tab, you can go all the way over here to the top left corner where it says Plot Area. This is the name box for chart elements. And currently it's telling me that the plot area is selected. But I can use my drop down arrow and I could change that to major grid lines right here. And now I've got my grid lines. And as soon as you do, your Format tab is telling you all about shape styles. And in fact, it's showing you lines in particular. So I could choose any of these styles. There's a drop-down box where I have even more choices. Like maybe I want to change the thickness, the color, the style that's perhaps dotted, or even arrows. So maybe I'll select this big black thick line here. And if I wanted to change that further, I could just come over here to Shape Outlines and maybe go to Weight, change the weight on that, maybe even thicker. But now I thought maybe I'll change the color back to Shape Outline, go over here to my colors, and maybe that's a gray. Lots of choices we have for changing things. Each one of these are their own elements. So I've just selected here these categories, and I could come over here to Home, and I can increase their size slightly. There we go. So each element, you can access it, and when you do select an element, remember that in the Format tab, you do have control over it. Now let's delete all that, and I want to show you one more option you have to format your charts rather quickly. Let's create another one. I'm just going to click in here, do Alt F1. Here's our basic chart. I'm just going to change the selection slightly so we don't see our totals and grand totals. I'm going to show you over here on the Format tab that you have all of these different styles and shapes and whatnot, but on the Design tab, sometimes it gets overlooked. It's all the way over here called Quick Layout. And Quick Layout actually changes where the data is. And you can see as I roll over several of these, it changes where the legend is, how the data is shown, and some of them work very well. Some of them even include the table of data used to make the chart, and this can be really quite useful. So think about these layouts. It's another way of formatting your charts.